Welcome. I'm going to continue our journey through laws of Tevilas Kalim, Teviling Kalim. Find the page. Okay. So, if you remember, yesterday we discussed the wooden pieces that you stood up and you surrounded with metal bands to support it. That was the word I was looking for yesterday. I said standard. I meant support. To keep it together, thus making a keli, a vessel, a cup, whatever. It's a bunch of little pieces of, little small planks of wood or big planks of wood, and they're held together with metal bands on the outside, specifically. Do we follow the wood? That's really what the vessel is, and wood is exempt from tevila, from teveling? Or do we say that the metal on the outside, although it's on the outside, it's really supporting the whole thing, making it really into a vessel. So it's really the metal that is the vessel, and therefore it would be required to be teveled. We had that discussion. The following law in the Shulchan Aruch is possibly, technically, the reverse of this case. So instead of having pieces of wood that are held together with metal bands on the outside, you have metal pieces which are held together with wooden bands on the outside. Okay? Now why did I say possibly technically? Because there is a multiple way argument of how to understand the basis of this law, which is printed in the Torah, which is really based on the Sefer Mitzvahs Katan, which is literally means the small book of mitzvahs, which is an important halachic work which was written hundreds of years ago. How to understand what exactly is being referred to. One opinion saying, like I just described, it's metal pieces held together by wood, and the law is that it does need to be teveled. Why is it any different? I thought we have a doubt whether we follow the support or we don't follow the support. Here, we still have that doubt, but here there's an additional factor, which is that the metal is on the inside, and that's where you actually use the contents. You put the food or the drink into the vessel. That's where the metal is in this case. And the metal is really, that is what's holding, and that is what's touching, and that is where the food is being used. Therefore, it is required to be tevel. One way of understanding this. Another way of understanding it, that it's referring to a metal cup, that, or metal pieces, let's say, that is inside of a wooden cup. You can even see through the metal pieces, or the metal has parts where you can see through to the wood on the outside. So if the wood wasn't there, it would actually leak. Okay, so here it's a similar thing. It doesn't need to be teveled, and we almost ignore the fact that there is a support involved, because it's overridden by the fact that the metal is what's really the food is being used being used with the metal. So that's a complicated discussion. We're going to get too much into that. Further in this law, it says that a pepper grinder needs to be teveled. Now, if I'm not mistaken, what is being referred to here in the Shulchan Aruch is not the pepper grinder that we know of today, which is a container with pepper, what are they called? Kernels. Called something else, I don't know. Pepper pieces. And you have the thing on top, and you turn it over, and you go shh, 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 shh. So that actually does need to be teveled with a blessing. But I don't know if that's what it's referring to. I believe it's referring to an old style grinder, which is the mortar and pestle, however you pronounce it. It's a piece of wood that has metal at the end, and the metal is what grinds the pepper. So that needs to be teveled. Not only that, but also the commentary called the Pischei Tshuva brings from the Rabbi Yaakov Emden, a famous rabbinic authority of the past 500, 400, 600 years, that so too a coffee grinder. The way he words it here is the grinder that is used to crush the pods, whatever that they're roasted, we make the drink called kave. Kave is Yiddish for coffee. Also needs to be teveld with a blessing. Teveld, and he says, being that the coffee grounds are not actually food yet, they're not a drink, they're not something you eat. You make coffee out of it, but as it is right now, it's not really supposed to be eaten. He says teveld it without a blessing. Kind of similar, going back to law number 5 about the shechita knife. Fine. Going a little bit further. Also, a metal funnel. Okay. A metal funnel. It's a funnel. It's a funnel that's got a larger top on the top and has a tube going down. You put it into a bottle or whatever, and you can pour from a big barrel or giant pitcher or whatever into a smaller container easily without spilling everything all over the place. If it's made of metal, it has to be teveld with a blessing. Here's the catch. The commentary of the Shach explains that if the funnel, if the top of the main part of it, where the liquid enters, is made of wood, for example, something that does not need to be teveld, and the tube part, where the liquid is going to pass through into the lower container, is made of metal, which is a material that does need to be teveld, the rule is, not the rule, but the final ruling is that the whole thing does not need to be teveld at all. Why? Is there metal on here? Half the thing is made of metal. The Shach explains that the metal section is actually nullified to the wooden section. It's as if it's not there in a sense, because it doesn't support the other part of it in any way. And the liquid literally just passes through it. It doesn't even stay there for a moment. So the entire thing does not need to be teveld. Then the law over here ends off with a fascinating rule. When you have the gist of this discussion is you have a utensil that's made of two different materials. One material that is exempt from tevilah, and one material that is required, that needs to be teveld. How do you view it? So he provides the Ramah Islis, he provides a very important rule of thumb when it comes to this. If the main component, the main part of the vessel is made of metal, you need to tevel it. Okay? So going back to the coffee grinder for a second, the pepper grinder, the modern day pepper grinder. It's in a container. Let's say the container is plastic or wood, and has the pepper pieces inside it. And you have the top. It's a plastic usually. It's plastic grindy thing, but the inside has a little bit of metal where the pepper passes through and it actually gets ground. Sometimes I think they're made of plastic, but if it's made of metal, the grindy part, you need. If it's a permanent thing, not when you go to the store, you grind it until it's empty and then you throw it out. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about one that you actually reuse over and over. It would seemingly need to be teveld with a blessing, because the main component here is the grinder part, the metal grinder part. If you were to take out the grinder part, you can't say, "Oh, I took out this little piece of metal. It doesn't really change much." Your pepper grinder now became a cup, or the grinding part became a nothing. It's useless. The main component was taken out. However, if the main part of the vessel is made of wood or rubber or something like that, and there's a little bit of metal in it or on it, and if you were to take away the metal part, you could still use the vessel, no problem. Such a thing does not need to be teveld. For example, what came to mind? Imagine you have a silicone spoon, or wooden spoon even. A wooden spoon is a better example. A wooden spoon, okay? And now, wood does not need to be teveld, as we explained multiple times. A wooden spoon, and it has a small, not a seal, but like basically a signature or whatever, a logo printed on the handle of the spoon, made of metal, little tiny logo, the name of the company. There's metal on the spoon. Maybe you need to table it. Says Rav Moshe Isserlich that you don't need to table it at all, because if you were to take off that metal piece, your spoon would be 1,000% functional the same way it would be with the piece. Because why? Because the metal doesn't add anything to the function of the keli, of the function of the vessel. This would be a different story. Is if, for example, you had a spoon which was a wooden handle with a metal bowl, the thing at the end, which is actually the spoon part. If that was made of metal and the rest of the handle was made of wood, you can't say, "Oh, if I take away the metal, I can still do the same thing." No, you can't. If you take away the spoon part of the spoon, you have no spoon. You have a stick. It doesn't serve the same purpose. Yeah, and this is also connected back with yesterday's discussion that if you have a vessel that's made of something that's not required to be tabled and it has screws of metal, okay? If the screws are crucial to the use of the vessel, that would make it need to be tabled. With or without a blessing depends on whether the metal is exposed on the inside where the food goes. For example, the screw goes all the way through to the other side of the wall, and there's another screw in its place that doesn't have the sharp things sticking out into your food. Yeah. So the gist of this law, in a nutshell, is a vessel that has metal in it, and the metal is crucial to the use of the vessel, it would need to be taivled. With a blessing, without a blessing, that's up for discussion depending on what the thing is. And with that, wish you a good night and a good Shabbos. The next class on this will be, God willing, on Sunday night. Okay? Please join us. We're here. Have a great night.